second. There we go. So yeah, as I said, I'm joined here with Chloe, and we are going to do a presentation together on the EU legislative changes around exports. So we're going to have a bit of an introduction to traceability. Chloe's going to take us through some labelling, and then I will do some updates on the 2026 requirements, a brief update on EU catch, some DEFRA policy updates, and then there will be time for a Q&A as well. If you do have any questions whilst we're going through this presentation, there is a Q&A function within this meeting, so please feel free to post your questions in there as we go through, and then we will do our best to get back to as many of you as possible. If we do run out of time, we will take those questions away and we will make sure that we get answers to them as well. So without further ado, I will get started. Okay, so we're going to start with traceability. I'm going to bring Chloe in.
Good afternoon. So we're going to start by talking about what is traceability and why does it matter. Traceability is the ability to trace something as it moves through a process. For the fishing industry, this means being able to trace fish or fisheries products right from the sea to the plate. In the UK, it's a legal requirement that fish is fully traceable from catch to marketing, export and consumption. Accurate labelling and sharing of information is also essential for seafood businesses to ensure that the fish or shellfish has been caught legally and is safe to eat, to ensure that it can be successfully exported and has the relevant information for those documents, and to satisfy consumer confidence and interest. It's also necessary for regulators like ourselves, the MMO, to ensure that businesses are complying with the regulations. There are numerous benefits to seafood traceability to health, such as identifying and removing unsafe products, promoting good practice, and satisfying and verifying that worker standards are being met. Wealth, ensuring correct labelling prevents undercutting by cheaper or lower quality products. It provides information demanded by customers in high value markets, reduces individual monitoring and checks, and it informs fisher compensation in case of disruption. And to the environment, providing information on stock removals for fishing activity, preventing products from IUU fishing entering the supply chain, and sharing good environmental qualities. As well as the MMO, there are other regulators that have an interest in traceability, such as the Food Standards Agency, Trading Standards and Port Health Authorities. As well as other regulators, there are other stakeholders such as fishers, the supply chain and consumers. Labelling. Fisheries products go through multiple processes before reaching the final consumer, and traceability has to be maintained throughout. This requires the product to be labelled at every stage of that journey. Labelling on landing. On landing, all lots of fisheries products destined for market must be labelled. A lot means a quantity of fisheries or aquaculture products of a given species of the same presentation and coming from the same relevant geographical area and the same fishing vessel or group of fishing vessels or aquaculture production unit. Most of the information needed for export is required under current UK labelling legislation. The devolved governments are engaging with the catching sector to improve compliance with labelling requirements. We're focusing on the elements required for export, and we're requesting additional data to facilitate export. Next slide, please, Jodie. Thank you. Oh, sorry, back one. So in addition to the legislated requirements on labels to facilitate trade and export in the supply chain, we're requesting trip dates, so the date the vessel left port to the first day of landing for that trip. Those dates will fulfill requirement D of date of catch. We're asking for the gear code or subcategory such as OTB or bottom trawl, the port of landing, and the EEZ, e.g. UK EEZ, that the fish was caught in, and if applicable, the RFMO or high seas area. So the MMO has a suggested label template that's available to download from our website. It does have quite a lot of information on it, but much of that will be the same for every fishing trip. So we've also suggested that certain elements are pre-filled, is then printed, and only those bits that change on the trip have to be filled out at the time. So items such as vessel name and PLN will be the same. For many smaller vessels, your port of landing, catch area and gear may be the same for every trip as well. We've also got an example label for a multi-lot trip. So the suggestion would be that within the fish box, bag, whatever method the fish is landed in, you have a chit with a unique identifying reference. So here's one which has the vessel name, a PLN, and then a unique identifying number on it. And then we've got a cover label that covers all of the information that's the same for every lot, and with a list at the bottom with a unique identifier for each lot stating the species and the total weight. Fish must be labelled at all stages of the supply chain. As a merchant, processor or exporter, you may be responsible for additional requirements from other bodies, such as the Food Standards Agency. There are changes to the requirements for labels on import to the EU from the 10th of January. We can advise on what legislation they've published, but we cannot advise on how it's going to be enforced when your product enters an EU port. On import to the EU, all lots of fisheries products must be labelled. The UK definition of a lot is the same from landing to export point, but the contents of a lot may be split or merged along that journey. Most of the information needed for export is included in UK labels. This labelling information is required to be with the lot, not on every package. From the 10th of January, your lot labels will need to include catch certificate numbers. This is the only significant change.
Thanks, Chloe. So I will now just briefly run through the EU's changes to their IUU documents that are going to come into force on the 10th of January. So there are 5 key changes to their catch certificate: the inclusion of catch dates, catch area, fishing gear, updated transport details, and some cosmetic changes to the PDF. So for catch dates, they have now included the start date as well as the date of landing. This start date is defined as the date the vessel left port on the trip the fish was landed. So for store pots, this is not the date that the pot was deployed. This is the date that the pot was picked up and then landed. And then obviously the end date is the date of landing. This is the date that you currently supply when creating a catch certificate, and that requirement remains the same. And they have also expanded their catch area requirements. So at the moment, you supply the FAO area, which for the vast majority will be FAO 27, but they have now included a requirement for the exclusive economic zone to be added, and indication if the vessel was fishing in the high seas, as well as, where relevant, the applicable regional fisheries management organisation needs to be added onto the catch certificate. So what does this mean? So the exclusive economic zone extends out to 200 nautical miles from the coastal line, or it is where the median line meets another country's limits. So the vast majority will be fishing within the UK's EEZ, but as you can see from this map, there are areas, certainly down south, where the median line intersects very closely between 2 countries. If a vessel is fishing in more than one EEZ, there is the ability to add multiple when you go through your application. So RFMO, so Regional Fisheries Management Organisations, are international organisations that have established binding measures for conservation and sustainable management of highly migratory or straddling fish species. One that is commonly fished in within the UK is the North East Atlantic Fisheries Commission. This map here just shows you that if the vessel was fishing in any of these dark blue areas, within the NIAF waters, that is where you would need to add that to your catch certificate. But if the vessel was fishing in the EEZ of any country within those NIAF waters, then you do not need to enter that RFMO reference. And high seas. So the high seas sit outside of the EEZ, so they're international marine waters, out of the jurisdiction of any country. So this is just a yes/no box that you need to fill in when filling in your application. There is now a requirement to add fishing gear onto your certificate. So this is using the drop-down menus to select from predefined lists. And there are some additional transport details now needed. The EU have stated that all known transport information at the point of creating a catch certificate will be required to be printed on the certificate. We can no longer say, please see attached transport documents. So it will be the exporter's responsibility to fill in this section and ensure that there is some information put on the certificate. We understand from feedback from industry there are instances where having the transport details from the point of export will be impossible. In those instances, the EU have said that they will allow the details known to the exporter at the time, if that is the transport details from your establishment to a logistics hub. Where you know additional modes of transport, and if you know that your mode of transport is going to change before it enters the EU, then there is the ability to add more than one mode of transport to your catch certificate. And you also need to include the point of destination on the certificate as well. The EU have said that if this is not known, then you can put the first point of entry into the EU, but what they ultimately would like is the point of destination. And just to highlight that there are some changes to the PDF itself. These do not have an impact on you when you are doing your application, but if you are printing out the PDF, it will look different. So in section 2, there's the inclusion of the IMO or the unique vessel identifier. This section is going to be automatically populated where applicable. Section 7, there are some adjustments to the transshipment section. Section 11, they've updated their importer declaration. And then sections 12 and 13 are for the importing authority to fill out. So coming on to the processing statement, there are minimal changes to the template itself or the information contained within it, but there is a significant change to a requirement of when the processing statement is needed. So at the moment, when a consignment is imported into the UK, processed and then exported, it would require a processing statement, but there is a new requirement, which means that any processing that is done on land, even if it is caught by a UK vessel, will require both a catch certificate and a processing statement. And they have also introduced a definition for processing. So the EU have said that a processing statement is needed for any processing activity, including cutting, filleting, canning, smoking, salting, cooking, pickling, drying, or preparing fish for market in any other manner. Fishery products subject only to freezing and/or packaging will not require a processing statement. The EU have also provided further clarification that any washing or cleaning also does not require a processing statement. So this is a snippet from their regulation around when a processing statement is required. So a processing statement is required for processing operations carried out on fishery products after landing in approved establishments. So I think the key message here is that it is after landing. So if it is a UK vessel landing fish into the UK and has done processing on board that vessel, you do not require the processing statement. But if the fish is landed and then further processed on land, you will require both a catch certificate and a processing statement. So I have a very basic scenario just to highlight how that will work. So in this scenario, if vessel Amber G lands 1,000 kilograms of gutted cod and Andy buys 500 kilograms of that gutted cod to make it into fillets, Andy needs to create a catch certificate for the 500 kilograms of gutted cod that he purchased to export. So this is the example catch certificate number. And this is what he would need to put on his processing statement. So it references the UK catch certificate. It has the description of the catch, and then the weights are as follows. So the total landed weight, it is a little bit of a misleading title, but unfortunately it is the wording that the EU has put on their certificate, so we are sort of bound to that. But it is the total landed weight to be exported. So in this example, it is not the 1,000 kilograms that was landed by vessel Amber G, it's the 500 kilograms that was purchased by Andy and put on the catch certificate to be exported. So this total landed weight box should always align with the box 3 weight on the catch certificate. The catch processed is how much of that total landed weight to be exported that is going to be processed for export. So in this instance, Andy processed the full 500 kilograms, so he's put that in that box. And then the processed fishery product is the processed product that doesn't include any other ingredients. So if you've got oils or things like that in your product before it goes to export, it is just the weight of the fishery product in there. The total landed weight is never needed on the processing statement unless it is all being exported. I've also included here just a snapshot of our test environment. I would like to heavily caveat that this isn't necessarily the final product. It may change ever so slightly, but I just wanted to draw attention to the fact that there is going to be a change within the application as to how you are asked for your information. So it is still the same information that you enter now, but you are going to be asked for it in a slightly different order. And this means that we are able to link each product to the catch certificates that contribute to that product, and this is to help further facilitate integration with the EU's catch system so that those processing statements can be transferred over to the catch system. And then we have the non-manipulation document. So we previously called this a storage document, but the EU introduced a template for it in March. With this, they have introduced additional fields. It's currently required where something is imported into the EU and stored in the UK prior to export, and where it is not in transit. But there is a new requirement to provide one where the consignment has been split prior to re-export. So when it has been, if a consignment comes into the UK, it's split into two before it's being exported again, you would need a non-manipulation document for each sub-consignment before it goes onwards. So a quick summary of the changes. They have added an arrival to the place of storage section. So this includes details for the consignment's journey prior to storage, so where it has been exported from before it entered the UK. They have updated their consignment details and split it into two sections. So consignment details upon arrival to the place of storage and consignment details upon departure from the place of storage. The vast majority of the time, these will remain the same, but when the consignment is split is where these bits of information can differ. And then departure from the place of storage details as well. So these are the transport details leaving the UK. And a quick update on EU catch. So DARA are running sessions on catch for their importers and any other interested parties. So if you are interested in learning more about catch, then please register your interest at the email address shown here. So what is catch? Catch is integrated within the Traces NT platform. It is an EU-wide IT system used to manage documents related to import, re-export, and where applicable, export of fishery products. It's the EU's first IT tool to streamline the checks and verifications of fishery products entering the EU market. And as I mentioned earlier, the UK are looking at a digital solution for integration with the EU. And a small update from DEF policy. So UK import requirements for indirect exports. So the new EU import requirements will also apply to seafood which has been imported into the UK, processed and stored, and then re-exported to the EU. So UK exporters will have to provide the same additional information to the EU importers for indirect exports as for exports originating from the UK. So in order to support this, the UK will be changing their import requirements by amending the IUU documents set out in the UK's IUU regulation to mirror the EU's requirements. This will ensure that there is continuous flow of trade with the EU. This legislative change is expected to come into force in spring 2026. Ahead of this change going ahead, the UK has been engaging with countries that export into the UK to agree that they use the EU's revised IUU documents and processes when exporting their products to the UK to ensure that exporters have access to that additional data. So what are we doing to support this? So the UK are updating their IUU document templates to ensure that they remain compliant with the EU requirements come January 10th. There will be updated application screens to allow for the completion of these new fields within the Fish Export Service. These changes are being released incrementally. There have been user research sessions running. We have started the Fish Trace Ship campaign website. And there has been and will continue to be extensive communications across the whole supply chain. There is continuous new guidance being added to the gov.uk. And we are continuing to communicate with the EU. And as you saw from Chloe's presentation, we are working on wider traceability. And there has also been the creation of the UK's frequently asked questions, which gets updated. Okay. Thank you. That is the end of our presentation. So I'm just going to stop sharing my screen.